Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, April 12th. I am Tom Kaczynski. Welcome to the show. And I believe, at least for the foreseeable future, this will be the final edition we'll be doing for a while. So if you see a little bit of drizzle, it's me outside playing with the birds. You see what they're up to there, eating some egg and some leftover pasta, what I cut into little pieces. If you ever have birds, make sure they're small because they're gluttons who will choke on anything. I mean, it's kind of how their digestive system works. They literally swallow rocks to break up their food. Kind of a different way, but you find that there are different ways to do things as you go through life. And it's kind of the point where I'm at. So we'll use today's show as a farewell of sorts. So we cover a couple things, just some things I've been watching. Let's start with some news. What do you think about that? Iran and Israel look like they're slowly moving towards a larger fight, which will be a big Middle Eastern fight. Hopefully, the United States and the West has the wisdom to extricate itself from this. Um, it's funny. We didn't have any beefs with the Middle East until that state was put there. It's funny how that all worked out. And the funniest thing about it, and to the eternal lament of the Christian faith, is that the biggest group who's backing Israel are evangelical Christians whose crime really is not reading their own Bible, because if you can read that and think there's another way to heaven in some state where Jesus isn't needed, well, that's why he was rejected the first time by the people who he went to speak to. It's funny here in this time that we see the same thing happening again. It's not surprising, though. I mean, it's hard. I think, from a theological perspective, the problem is that people want to earn their salvation through the law rather than accept the gift of salvation through grace, which we do not deserve and received as a gift. And accepting gifts is hard, actually. We live in a world where we are taught everything has a price, and we all live that truth. Yours truly more than others, but his kingdom is not our kingdom. And to enter a new kingdom, something I think about quite a bit these days, you have to sometimes leave your own assumptions behind. I know in my own life, I've always been moving back in time as time moves forward against me. That's why I studied the Middle Ages as a scholar. That's why I looked back at history for the things that were hidden from us, that were taken from us. And one day I will write again. I promise you that. As long as I hold up and my health permits. Certainly had some brushes with danger as far as that goes this year, but I'm still here, and so is Dana, and we're going to keep trying, and we're going to keep saying things, and we're going to try to reach the people where we can, and hope the Lord leads the people into our lives who need to be here. I used to try to reach a lot of people, but honestly, all you do is get scapegoated and castigated. And, as I'm looking ahead to days when American politics are so far beyond my concern, it's an interesting thing that you can't exist and pick a fight on any major issue and then be anything other than an avatar for the cause you get drawn into. I mean, one of my extreme frustrations over many years that I will admit to is that, I've studied so many things and comment on so many things, and I've demonstrated that at a national level. I mean, those of you who've been around the longest know I covered politics. At the same level, I covered dissident movements, and I covered medicine, and I could jump between something else if I wanted again, although it does get harder as you get older. But why do you want to fight the algorithm? I mean, unless you want to be a paid shill, which, you can see who's big and draw your own conclusions about how that works. But you can't say what you want to say today and find the benefit of it, other than to self-sort into groups that want to go for it. And this is it. And when I think about how I want to talk about that, an idea you might see me look at in the future. I'll give you a little hint of a little flavor of some book thinking I'm doing. Tribes versus herds. We were tribes who've been turned into herds by tribes that know how to work against us. And it's at the heart of identity politics, especially gender politics, the weaponization of women and their independence against men. I mean, you can go back and look at Bernays, you can go back and Lippmann. You can go back, if you know the books, you can go back 110, 120 years and figure out how this was engineered. And it was engineered. That our societies would be like Plato's Republic. We would have the states controlling us, and they would tell us what to do. It's why naturopaths were pushed out of medicine, and it was professionalized. Or, in the old days, to pass the bar exam, all you had to do was pass the bar exam. You didn't have to go to school and get the debt servitude bondage that legislators put in. The knowledge of a thing was enough. And as we see a society where law is breaking down, one potential is a society where people take back that power and just give the minimal amount of support to those sovereign entities with which they have to contend that they must. Although the more likely one, to be honest with you, the two more likely ones are general collapse from the competency crisis. You know about that one. And then the other one is if you live in a totalitarian state that exists because most people are, consigned to learn helplessness, is I guess the way I'd say it, because they don't know how to survive absent the motors running as well as they do. I mean, and it's hard. I mean, thinking of our time in Maine, we have had to learn how to do a lot of skills that are subsistence level. We have learned how to survive on our own. It is not pretty. It is not always fun. It is not efficient in that sense, but we can survive. And that basic skill set is not one that gets imparted. It doesn't get imparted because fathers are working. They're not training their sons. Women can't cook because mothers aren't at home. They do not train them. The state picks what we're supposed to know. The state sets the rules, and we accept that, and we think it's a blessing because we think it's imparting knowledge. But how many knowledges don't get imparted? I went to gifted education, and at least going back to high school, my time in Arizona, we didn't learn enough math. We didn't learn almost anything about radio waves or electricity or electronics. We learned how to operate the tools of our world without understanding how they work. And as I sit in a stack of books, things like linear algebra and circuit switching, thinking about what is this magic that is electricity, I think of all the things that we've been told are true that are not, and all the things that are true that we don't learn anything about. And I go out there with more questions, and that's one of the reasons why I don't talk more. The wife always asks me why I don't preach more. It's because I have a lot of questions. It's not that I don't care. I mean, you need to get right with the Lord. There's no question of that. But what the Lord actually says and what your average Christian denomination teaches are not necessarily one and the same. And I think you owe it to yourself to take a lot of time to familiarize yourself with the Word, look at what you see in this world, and begin thinking of the world a little differently. The way I think of the world is I think of myself as a consciousness engine, which is what you could call a soul in certain ways in terms of its agency in whatever this experience is. And that we pull the future we want towards us. We literally pull ourselves through our wishes, thoughts, desires, and our expectations. We see what we expect to see. We do expect to see a lot of bad things because we're propagandized to see a lot of bad things. But you can see good things if you don't let the bad things get in the way. Although it does seem that this world trends slightly to the bad because it is a fallen place. And we do labor under a curse. I mean, I was talking with Dana about this the other day. We ate of the tree of good and evil. And so if you really want to weigh a context to understand this life, and if you, for whatever reason, can't connect to Christianity or to the Christ as a Savior, work on that. But you can probably connect to the idea that this is a battle of good and evil, and understanding that sometimes goods lead to evils and sometimes evils lead to good, and sometimes that's the way free will runs, and that's why you give faith over to the Lord, because you understand the limits of what one can accomplish. You can help people, but it will be weaponized against you. And if you try to do the right thing, as you will often discover, and as I've discovered many, many times, that the resistance is overwhelming to that, including from the very people you will want to help most. I'm not claiming I have the answer to all things. I don't. I'm a questioner. I've made some friends. I'm grateful for you guys. You know who you are. And if you haven't connected with me, now's a good time. Telegram at Tom Kaczynski. And you can find me on Twitter. I'm not going to be responding much for the rest of this month. I will be busy with other things. Spring is here. That requires a lot of things. And I'm focused on my own life now, because that's where it's got to be. And that's where you need to be. Time is short. If you found some of the ideas that I've presented over the years about getting out of Dodge, interesting, as some have, I'll continue to explore that. And that will be something going forward. But as that goes forward, this goes away. And there's no shame in it. That I've been able to present my thoughts for years. And I will tell you, I do wish sometimes, between you, me, and the wall, if the algorithm wasn't against me, if the podcasting would let me say what I want to say, I could have a huge show. But it's only worth doing to me if I can say the truth. And I have no desire for celebrity. I hate it. I really don't like it at all. I like living in anonymity. I like living in book-filled, stuffy rooms that I'm left alone in my shoebox and looking something like a hobo, like I do today. I mean, literally, I am Can Man. which is what I like, because that's not about me. I'm not an egomaniac. I know my own limitations too well. I know I'm able to do things that a lot of people can't. I consider that a blessing, and I know that that gives me an awareness of all the things that are even beyond me. That, the higher up on the mountain you get, the bigger the horizon gets. That's all it is, and that's humility. That's humility, because only God sees all. But we can see some, and we do need to learn to look. And these were gifts we're given us. We're going to be held responsible for what we do with our talents and our abilities. And for these last few years, Dana and I have tried very hard to reach people, to share good things. We have touched some people in our lives. We have reached some people that have led to tragedy for us, because we trusted the wrong people sometimes, and those histories are known. But it is our story, and it's an interesting one. And one day maybe I will tell, in a saner time. And I've kind of accepted my job in the future is to comment. The ideas need to get out there about why the world is moving the way it is, and to the extent I can free myself from financial servitude, which your contributions that you've given over the years at Venmo to at CVCPRV actually have helped. And for those of you who've come along on some other things we've done, we've made it. We've survived. We dug ourselves out of debt, which was good, and we now have some freedom of motion, which took us a long time, and we weren't sure there was enough time. But the one thing I've always realized about my own predictions is they take longer to play out. But if you think we can get through this election cycle without people going to war over it, well, I don't know. I don't think you can accept any outcome, but I'll be honest, I don't think there's as much of a difference between the choices as you think there is. There's the overt evil and the covert evil, and there's no place for a good person. I mean, I will say in America, I'll just say this. If the system didn't run the propaganda, the party that would emerge would probably be socially conservative and economically, let's say, liberal. People want a party state that will take care of them on basic needs they agree everyone should have access to, especially the younger folks, like healthcare, and that's fine. If you don't have healthcare, and you won't realize this till you're old or sick, it is very hard to do anything. And even when you have it, when you see an old person who can't do that much, please understand something. Sometimes that 1 hour, that half hour they give you took a whole day to put together. I understand this, and it's something you cannot and will not understand when you're young, because the war against your body is real. And yes, you can do things to be healthier with it, and yes, exercise helps and all those things, but and I've lost weight, by the way. I know you guys like to, you can even see it in my face. The jowls are a little less, and it's still a process. I admit that. But I've decided I'm going to, and I am. And I've lost 20 pounds plus. And I will continue losing weight here, because now I'm ready to, because we basically gave the last year over to just working really, really hard to get ourselves to a position where we have options, because we figured we would suffer while it was easier versus suffering while it's harder. And that's always the equation, by the way. Are you going to be an ant, or are you going to be a grasshopper? Go read the famous Aesop fable, or if that's too tough for you, go watch the old Disney cartoon, the old one, not the new one, which is very entertaining in a way. Because sometimes it's fun to look at things that way. It's hard for us to read long form things. It's hard for me to do. Because I do work these days sometimes where I read a lot. And reading a lot makes it hard to read. It's funny, when I used to work in offices, which I've done quite a few times in my life, my vacations were always very active. And when my work was sedentary, my vacations were active, and vice versa. So if I had active work, like when I worked as a courier, I enjoyed my vacations to be incredibly sedentary, which is, we always want balance, right? And that's what you find. It's this search for balance that is important. But what would I watch for in the days ahead? I want to give you some advice. I do believe war is coming. I do believe a draft is coming. I believe if you are a male under 45, and frankly, the way things are going, if you're a woman aged 18 to 30, you probably need to be thinking of these things as eventualities with which you may have to contend. I hope I'm wrong about that. I may be wrong about that. I think that's less likely if Trump gets in there. But there's a lot of time between now and then, and we have overcommitted to wars that are not in our interest. I think you need to watch for the way medicine is going to evolve. I think mandatory treatments that involve genetic therapies are a problem. There's a lot of research coming out now, search where you will, about spike proteins and how they've gone far beyond what was expected, or I shouldn't say expected, that's not right. I should say advertised on the label. And I think if you look at that, you will want to be circumspect in what you consider. I think that you would do well to build resilient relationships that do not rely upon technology as an intermediary any more than necessary. And I think I want to say this for my older friends, especially who have the benefit of wisdom and some resources. I know many of you are tired and you have roots here and you have connections that you value deeply. Those will be weaponized against you, and the young, all you need is one person who's kind of against you in their youth, in their rebellious phase, who can be easily cultivated, and a whole family can be taken down. And we've seen this many, many times in history, and you're leaving them to a state which is going to be more demanding in the future. If it doesn't fall apart altogether, in which case, whatever preparations you've had and how you think that's going to work out, that's a crapshoot. And it's all is, by the way. But if the state gets bigger and more involved, and I don't think this matters if it's right wing or left wing, you're going to see it get more invasive, because we have not given up our addiction to technology. And as long as we don't give up our addiction to technology, we do not give up our addiction to surveillance. What are our thoughts? They're designed between us and God. The devil's always trying to get right between them and read your every thought. And if you ask a machine how to do it, you're kind of allowing that opening. And it is crazy. I mean, the different levels of it, ranging from the ones that are easy to imagine, like someone snooping on you, to the fact that we don't know what observers can see, what goes on beyond our mind, what protection is out there, what ideas we have. And, like my wife always tells me rightly, it's why you should pray over things quite frequently and ask for the Lord's protection and His power. I mean, I will tell you, gifts are going to be coming in the days ahead that we don't understand today, and that we will struggle to admit in our broken, secular, kind of materialistic view of things. But that's just not the way the world works. It makes no sense. If you really work into the deep aspects of it. And if you look at quantum physics and all that, we've studied it and talked about it, you can figure that out too. I think that's something you could know pretty easily. As far as we go, looking back over years in New England, right? New England is a hard place that forces you to confront yourself. And there's good in that. You learn and you grow, but you pay a price. We were looking at some pictures of ourselves 4 or 5 years ago. The wife and I were, and how many years we've put on. Like right now, I look a lot less old than I usually do, right? Because I cut my hair. I don't have my awful grizzled beard that I enjoy having, that looks like a nest of something. And people will take me seriously, but I don't really. I mean, I know that's how it works. I know people are obsessed with image. I know people are obsessed with standing. It's why I like writing so much. Ideas have to stand or fall on their own. We don't just go line up like tribes where everyone gets behind the alpha and all that. And I've never lived in that world. I don't think that way. And ultimately, that's not where things are decided. A lot of years in this game of information warfare, and I've learned that what you're doing is you're fighting over the headwaters. In the same way, if you've ever played Othello, or Reversi, as it's sometimes called, are you trying to get to the corners? Are you trying to get to the edges? Are you trying to define where the lines sit? And can you figure out where to put your pieces ahead of time to flip everything on the board? That's what happens. You go define terms. You go define the future. You do it through fiction, right? You do it through fiction to present an idea. More people know what Quidditch is than probably badminton at this point. Something to think about. Why does that happen? Because there's a compelling truth that's spoken to that is beyond our physical reality. And our physical reality is certainly something with which we have to contend. But if it is all we contend with, then we might as well be animals and slugs. And many people are. I find that as time goes by, I think a lot of people have given themselves over. I think a lot of people have lost that spark. And I think a lot of people could be, just walking around with nothing on the inside. I mean, the NPC thing is telling. I find that we've been weaponized against one another in ways that are hard to come together. People say, why do I talk about controversial issues when culture can fix them? Because culture is destroying them to make these issues bigger. And a healthy culture would go back to simple terms. So you said 150 years, you get solve a lot of problems. Families would work right. Relationships between the sexes would work right. You wouldn't have everything being run. And we don't ask the question if things are good for us. We ask, is it new or is it modern? And we've been propagandized to act where, I don't even want to say we act against our interests. We do, but that's not what it's about. We act where we accept certain things as inevitabilities that need not be. And, there are positives, but kind of like my own addiction with sugar, right? The benefits up front, the damages in the long term, and we live in a diabetic society in a lot of ways. Where's Wilford Brimley when you need him? I wish I got more of a chance to share my sense of humor. I didn't, because events overtook it. And people have generally found yours truly, and those who've met me, I'm pretty personable, a little crusty sometimes, but definitely like making jokes, making laughs, and you can't do that anymore in the world. You just can't. There's no humor left. Everything is this eternal war, and it's the wrong war. I don't want to fight anyone. I mean, Elmer's picking. It's interesting. My birds like to have conversations with every other bird in the area, and they kind of treat us as part of the flock so we can sit here and listen to bird conversation. I love birds. They're so smart. I just wish they could learn to crap where they're supposed to, but no magical miracles on that one. Anyway, so as far as other things out there, expect inflation to continue. The Fed is probably going to have to jack up the rate one more time, even though they don't want to, because of how they're reporting different things, and because the U.S. dollar not having so much value. It's going to hurt the Europeans more than anyone else, but that's what they're going to try to do before an election year, and Biden's in trouble. You see the whole media turned on the question of what's been happening in Gaza. Our position, Dane and I hold that is a terrible thing that will lead to a reprisal that, is frankly years in coming. I would take no joy in it, but that's the reality of what's going to happen. We live in a world where things do not remain hidden, and you have to accept that, and you have to adjust your own behaviors accordingly. And if you want to be hidden, it's actually easier than ever, but you have to have the resistance to not come out of the talkie box, which is going to be a challenge for me, actually. I'm not saying you're never going to see me again. I may come on if I feel like it. I'm not committing to that, but I have no intention of coming on, save at random intervals when I want to. And in terms of any regular cast, this is the last one you can probably count on for a while. So I'm up at 20 minutes. I don't want to talk your whole day away, but I do want to say thank you for those of you who've been friends. Please keep in touch if you want to. And for now, this is coming to a close because a new chapter is going to be starting very soon in our lives, and we're excited for that, and excited for those who are, interested in sharing it with us. And other than that, I really don't have much to share, except I'm glad winter's finally breaking up here. And go chase my birds around the the compost pile. They always love digging through crap, but sometimes that's where you find the gems. I can't blame them for that. But anyway, let me close with a blessing to you all, because I always want to speak a blessing. And Lord, will you please bless the houses of everyone who listens. For those who haven't found you yet, may there be an opening in their hearts. For those who have, may you give them strength and courage to face them. And for those who are fighting your causes, Lord, give them the weapons and tools they need to prosper. And I just pray, Lord, that you lead Dana and I wisely as we seek your promised land here in these crazy days. In Jesus' mighty name, I pray that to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for following along. I am Tom Kaczynski, and thank you very much. God bless you all. Have a wonderful afternoon, and be good. All right, bye-bye.